Okay, so for coloring Spider-Man, we went over this a little earlier in the video, how in the 90s the colors were garish and they were overly blended. And I kind of like the look of the old vintage books where they were solid colors, very little shading. And then when I went on that field trip to the Society of Illustrators and I saw a guy named Martin French, the way he colored his illustrations, it just changed everything. It would just be a solid color, and then he'd throw a darker on there, sometimes a lighter for highlights, and it'd just be blocks. Blocks and hard lines. Basically kind of like the way he had drawn anime, except this is before anime was really popular in the US. And his inks were also very blocky. They were along the Mignola Frank Miller style, except he was a commercial illustrator, and I don't know how heavily he would have been influenced by these guys at all. But it definitely influenced me in the way that I do things. And so right now I'm just gonna fill in all the red, and I'm gonna fill in the blue, and then I'm gonna start adding the accents. And also, if you have any time after this video, and I'll look them up, I'll leave a link in the description. Just look at the work of Martin French if I could find it. I mean, I haven't looked him up in years, so I don't know what kind of internet presence he has. But you'll also notice I took time to clean up things I didn't like in the eyes, and I'm gonna do that in other spots too. Just clean up the inks and the pencils. And as you can see, once you start adding the colors and you get the dots in and you get the lines in, you know, it's less about how clean and perfect it is and more about the vibe and the feel. I mean, you could make every line perfect and clean, and that looks great too, trust me. Like a guy I mentioned a bunch of times in this video, Art Adams, everything is super clean and super on point, but it's also very cartoony and very free, and it's a great mix of everything. So you just gotta find your niche and find your style and find what you like to do and go with it. You know, you want to make the anime style, go for it. I mean, I used to draw my eyes huge. I mean, bigger than most animes. But then, you know, I started shrinking down. I still draw them bigger than most comic book artists when we get to a drawing where you actually see me draw regular people's eyes. But they're definitely bigger. And another big influence on the way that I do things is Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson. I actually got kicked off a Bill Watterson Reddit group because I posted a link to selling t-shirts, and I guess that's a no-no there. But he was a huge influence on the way I draw things, just the freeness and the cartooniness and the fact that the lines don't have to be perfect. In fact, I think he influenced Frank Miller a lot when he did Sin City, because there's some old Calvin and Hobbes strips called Tracer Bullet, where Calvin was a hard-nosed noir detective. He's got the big trench coat, and he also has the hat, and he looks a lot like Marv from Sin City, and everything's very dark and very black and very blocked out and heavy shadows, and I think that definitely influenced Miller's Sin City. In fact, I read a article of Frank Miller, and they asked him if he had any influences, and he said one of the things that he really liked reading was Calvin and Hobbes, so I'm sure he saw those strips. And the Tracer Bullet strips came out a good year before Sin City did, so I'm sure there's some cross-pollination there. So if you get a chance, look up Calvin and Hobbes Tracer Bullet, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Plus, they're great strips. They're fun reads, and you see stuff you would never see in a kid strip. You know, Calvin has his gun that he pulls out, and it's really hard-nosed noir detective stuff. It's pretty great. So anyway, back to my drawing. So now you see we're just blocking in the reds for the dark reds to give you that shadow feel and bring things to the front, push things to the back, make it feel more organic. This is more of the Martin French stuff coming in. Like, I'll black out this whole foot with the darker blacks. And then once we get to this, we do it for other parts and sketch it in and fill it in. You just kind of draw around and use the bucket to fill in all the extra parts. And this is something that, the way I do it, you might want to blend it in a little more. You could always blur the edges or blend them and use more shades of reds and make it look more natural. And there's watercolor brushes now that look just like watercolors. They've actually had them for a while. I'm gonna try those eventually, so we'll have that adventure together. But you also cut in back to the original red underneath, so it looks like a highlight. I also come in after we're done with the darks, which we'll get to, and then I add in some lighter red, well, it's more of a pink, and that's more of a highlight too. But I don't really do it with the blue. I leave the blue pretty much just two colors, the dark and the light. And since I said most of what I need to say about the colors, now we'll go on a little movie tangent. My favorite Peter Parker Spider-Man was Andrew Garfield. His movies weren't the best, but I think he had the right tone and the humor and did a really great Peter Parker. I like Tom Holland, he's cool, but in his movies I think he's more of a junior Iron Man than an actual Spider-Man. So hopefully the next movie, with everybody forgetting who he is and whatnot, they get to the whole street level Peter Parker doing it all on his own, finding himself. Great power comes great responsibility, all that good stuff. The Tobey Maguires are great. I remember all those when they came on. They changed the whole landscape for superhero movies, because before that you had Michael Keaton's Batman, and then you had Wesley Snipes' Blade, the forgotten superhero of the 90s that paved the way for a lot of what they do in the MCU now. They showed you that, you know, a less popular comic hero can carry a movie and people will go see it. And there's also the Crow. That's also one of my favorites. I'm sure we'll do a Crow drawing eventually. Yeah, the Crow, that was a big thing when I was younger. Me and a friend of mine, we went to see it on opening day. I snuck him and his girlfriend in the back door because they didn't have money for tickets, and I didn't have enough money to buy them for him, but we wanted to go see it, and I wanted to see it, so I dragged him along. So we opened the back door of the theater, they came in, sat down, and we all watched The Crow. I don't know if these are the kind of things you should be sharing on the internet, but you know, when you're young, you're a kid, you do dumb things. And here we are, getting to the spot where I said we added some lighter highlights to the Spidey suit. So you throw in a little pink over the red. That gives you a nice highlight and adds an extra dimension to it, but you still keep it nice and blocky and solid, because that sticks with the style of the drawing I did here. Again, you could blend it in, you could smooth it out, and you just experiment and you try different things and you find what works for you and what you like. You might like the smoother, clean, blurred, blending look. You might like the 90s look that I was talking about earlier that drove me to try different things and get it this way. It's all about what you enjoy and what makes it fun for you. The important thing is you have fun. If you don't have fun, then why bother drawing? Sometimes I sit around and I used to do freelance projects, and it's the last thing I wanted to do, like an album cover for a band I didn't like, and I just had to suck through it and get it done, and it wasn't fun. I didn't like it, but I did it. Nowadays I like to draw things for fun. And even if you have a project that you're not enjoying and you don't think it's fun, find a way to make it fun. Because what's the point if you don't enjoy what you're doing? That's what day jobs are for, right? And we all need a little escape from the day job. So you do what keeps you sane. I draw pictures, I build models, I write music. In fact, all the music you hear underneath this is from an album I put out a couple weeks ago. And I'll leave a link to that in the description, even though that's not what you're here for and you probably don't care. So now we're moving on to the blue, and we're doing the darker parts to give that some dimension. Apparently I just do this leg and then I move on to the background and the webs, and I use the Wayback Machine to look ahead, and I never went back and put any other darker on any other part of the drawing. But that's okay, because once we add the textures and the webs, which we'll get to in a bit, you'll see that you didn't really need it, and it's probably what I decided when I drew the drawing. So right now we're just erasing the blue inside the web so that we get the white and that it pops from the background. It's a lot quicker than actually drawing the webs, but some of those tedious little things you gotta do to complete a drawing. Here I am deciding what pen sizes I need to get into the small spots without too much bleed over. And then we just keep drawing in the white until we're finished. We gotta go around the whole body and the whole web and all the knots and all the overlap, and you'll notice I'm missing a few spots, but it doesn't matter because it's part of the style I go for anyway. I'm always it's good enough, because perfection is the enemy of getting things done. And I learned that if I sit there and I agonize over each little piece of everything, I never finish anything. So that's the way I get through it. You might be the person who has to draw every dash, every line, make sure everything is perfect, and that is okay too. And it'll probably make your drawing better than anything I ever do. And it may be more interesting, it may not, and that's okay, because it's all about what we do and what we enjoy. You might think Todd McFarlane and Art Adams are the worst comic artists ever, and you might be into more modern guys, and that's fine too, because those guys are great. And the whole point of me doing this is to get people to draw, to get me to draw, because I take a lot of time where I was like, oh, I'm too tired, I did too much today, I spent too much time on all these other things, and I'm too burnt out to actually get a drawing done. I figure if I record the screen and I make the videos and I get people involved with what we're doing and maybe make a community, then we'll all get a lot more work done and we'll all be better artists for it. And that's the main focus of all this. It's not to say, hey, look how cool I am, I made a YouTube video and I drew all these cool pictures. Nope. It's a motivational tool to get me to get work done, and hopefully to get some other people who have the same problems I have and the same motivational issues I have to get work done. So maybe as a community, we'll be drawing some of the coolest comic stuff out there. Or maybe we won't. You might hate this drawing, you might love this drawing. You might think I talk too much, you might think I don't talk enough. I'm still wondering if I need to talk at all over these videos, and if it just might be a quick little intro and play some of the music and just let it go, or if I should talk and give history lessons on certain aspects of the characters and things I know and things I find interesting about Spider-Man or Daredevil or Batman or Scud the Disposable Assassin. That'll be a video I'll do eventually too, because indie guys were a big influence on me also. I'm telling you, it's kind of hard to make drawing white lines over webbing interesting, so we'll just follow along and get through it. So once this is done, we get to the last stage of coloring, which I picked up a while ago, and that's adding texture. I think the texture just brings it all together and makes it everything more interesting, whether you're doing something like the Spider-Man or more of a cartoon thing like you're drawing a Stitch, which we'll be doing a Stitch drawing, and I think we're going to do a Bluey too. My granddaughter's really into Bluey, and I think mashing Bluey up with a superhero will be fun. And one of the things I'm known for in my little circle here and the conventions that I do is doing mashups of different characters. And I did a lot of Stitches. Stitch Spider-Man, Stitch Venom, Stitch Loki, Stitch Batman, Stitch Superman. The female Stitch Angel, I've done her as Wonder Woman and Gwenpool. So we'll get into some of that stuff on here too, because I think some of you will find that interesting. So now we're moving on to the background. And I was going to do a big city for my debut and get all into perspective and stuff, but we're going to save that for its own thing. And I just decided that putting a web behind him is just as interesting. So we're going to sketch that in quick. So you can go either way with this. It looks like webs. It has a little bit of a broken glass feel, but it's dynamic, and it brings your eyes to Spider-Man by drawing you into the center. So we're gonna rough this in, which is bringing us to the end of the drawing actually, which means I actually got through this whole mess. So hey, good for me. Another thing I've been thinking while going through this and talking through this and talking about different aspects of Spider-Man and comic books and influences and things like that is, how much do you really need to talk through on these videos? I mean, is it annoying you that I talk through this whole thing? Is it been informative? Is it part of the experience? Is it necessary? Do I need to talk the whole time, or just point out certain aspects of things that I'm doing, or throw in a tangent here and there in the middle of nowhere and surprise you in silence and just have the music playing in the background? These are things I'm going to think about while making these videos and try different things. So the next video I'm probably going to talk just as much and go over it, but I might do a quick one and not talk at all, or just give an intro and quick talk about what's going on in that section and then just let you watch it happen. So right now we brought down the opacity of the webs in the background so they blend in, and then we're going to bring in a paper texture and add that in, distress the drawing a little bit and give it some interest and a better feel to it and make it look more organic and done. The problem I have with some digital drawings is they look too stiff and too sterile and too clean, and sometimes that looks great. It's like, wow, that's amazing. And sometimes it just looks like, well, that's really boring. And with my drawings, sometimes I think it's kind of boring. So I like to throw textures on things and make them look a little worn. I used to have a bunch of textures saved in a folder, but I had a hard drive crash and lost almost all of them. So for these drawings, I'm pretty much looking for new textures everywhere. And now we're adjusting the color, because if you notice, it's originally kind of yellow, so we want to not have a bright yellow overlay on Spider-Man. We want it to be more in line with who he is and what he looks like and the color palette that we chose. And it just kind of blends everything together. And with that, we're at the end of the drawing. We just have to sign it and call it done. I thank you all for sticking around for the whole time and listening to me ramble on about Spider-Man. And I'll see you all in the next one, which should be out in a week or so.